Hello Brave Nation, we're here for Brave Combat Federation 75 in sunny Tenerife. I'm joined with Phil Campbell and Paul Browne here on the desk talking about this monumental event.
Yeah, this is an incredible fight card for a number of reasons. First of all, welcome guys. It's a pleasure to have you here with us on the broadcast team. If we dive right into our co-main event, we have Kevin Cordero taking on Levan Kirtadze. That for me is an incredible fight for a number of reasons. You have potentially one of the best featherweights in European MMA taking on a Georgian jigsaw puzzle. Why do I call him that? Because so far, the majority of people he has fought have not been able to figure him out. Paul, break down this fight a little bit for me and tell me why this is a fight people need to tune into.
Well, Kirtadze brings a lot of interesting attributes to the fight. This will be, I think, his 10th fight in less than 2.5 years, the last of which he went 5 full 5-minute rounds. So he brings a great physicality, great conditioning into this bout. He's not really one for the submission game, but he carries a lot of knockouts and TKOs on his record. So I think Cordero will have his hands full with this guy tomorrow night, Phil.
It's indicative of that kind of that Georgian mentality. You've called fights all across the globe. There's something a little bit intrinsically different about Georgian fighters. They have this ability to just bite down on the mouthpiece and go ham at it. You know, Kirtadze, for me, it's very interesting, the dynamic of this fight. Cordero has 4 losses. Each of those 4 losses have come against international opponents. He's completely blitzed it on the European stage, on the indigenous Spanish stage. But when he takes that step up, fighting international opponents, that's where he seems to have issues. And against a guy like Kirtadze, who has 8 wins by way of KO or TKO, Cordero cannot allow Kirtadze any time to settle and get into the confluence, the cadence of this fight whatsoever.
Yeah. Despite his young years, Cordero is quite an experienced fighter. He had about 17, I think it was 17 fights between 2017 to 2021. Not been as active since, but he certainly has a lot of miles on the clock already. He'll have faced plenty of difficult opponents, as you've alluded to, Phil. Some guys who've gone on to do some massive things in the game in that time frame since. And it's not a prospect that's going to overawe Cordero. He is, as I said, an experienced fighter, and it's a very interesting contest just to see how he handles the challenge that Piranha brings to the table.
Would seem Brave is the platform for the future stars to shine and the current stars to shine. So moving on to the main event, Acoidan Duque and Donovan Desmae, that is looking like an outrageously good main event.
I love this fight. This is a fight that could grace the main event of a number of international shows. You have Desmae, who for me is the clinician, if you will, Paul. He is the guy that has the better, well-rounded game. There's a little bit of a narrative coming into this fight that we have a striker versus grappler. I do not believe that. Desmae, yes, he is a technician on the feet, but he is also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in his own right. You have Duque, who is a veteran, the #1 ranked lightweight in Spain at the moment. But in Donovan Desmae, you have a man that trains right here in Spain, so he has the potential to take that #1 spot. You look at the guys he's training with. He's one of the main training partners of Ilia Topuria, former Brave Combat Federation fighter, has now gone on to the UFC. That tells you the kind of quality that we're looking at. And Paul, obviously with your background, a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I would love to know your insight into where you think this could be won and lost with regards to the grappling exchanges.
So one thing I've noticed in watching both fighters, I mean, Duque does like to push the pace, push his opponents against the fence, you know, switch the head to the outside and run the fight and look for that single. It's a risk doing it against a fighter like Desmae, who, as you've alluded to, is also like not only just a fantastic, well-rounded striker, but he carries that submission threat off his back. And also the rear naked choke is one of his primary weapons. He's dangerous everywhere. Both guys are very credentialed, seasoned veterans at this point of the worldwide mixed martial arts game. But Desmae is a real puzzle. It's difficult to pinpoint a part of the game where you're going to find a weak spot with him. He is very dangerous no matter where the fight goes. So Duque, who's a guy who relies heavily on submission victories, he's going to have to think possibly outside the box here to get the job done.
And every fight, this is what I love about MMA, every fight starts standing. So whilst you may be an incredible exponent of grappling, you need to close the distance, but in doing so, you're leaving yourself vulnerable to the counter shot from a striker like Desmae, who's incredible. His nickname is Vegas. I asked him, why is your nickname Vegas? He said, because I take risks and I always bet on myself.
There's going to be an interesting contrast here between the Spanish fans. Desmae training with the Ilia team here in the Clemente team, and Duque coming for the Clash of Titans, but he's from Tenerife. So is that going to be a contrast here for the fans in the support here?
Do you know what? I don't think there's necessarily going to be like a partisan type crowd that you're going to see. I think you see in MMA, you have fans of fighters. And this is why we love the sport so much. There's not necessarily that partisan nationalistic pride when it comes to fighters. You see it sometimes in Brazil, but a lot of the time what you see is fight fans being fans of individuals. And that's what I think makes MMA such a unique sport. So I don't necessarily think you're going to see a split. What I think you're going to see is one of the best main events in the history of Brave Combat Federation.
And it's going to be a monumental event because it is the 30th country that we visited. So a milestone here for Brave Combat Federation as we land in sunny Tenerife in Spain.
Yeah, huge. And again, Paul, I'd like to ask you, and yourself as well, Dean, guys that are coming into this for the first time, what are your impressions of Brave Combat Federation as a global entity?
It's great to see the company spreading its wings and you know, entering a new market, a new home to potentially going forward now for Brave Nation fans. And I'm really excited just to see how the Indigenous fighters get on here tonight and how they handle the pressure. The crowd is going to be you know, very loud and rapturous, we expect. But they've got plenty of, they're represented very well by a great handful of Indigenous fighters. So fighters like Desmae, we know he's based here, but he's coming in here as the foreign fighter. As we pointed out, it's very interesting to see how the crowd responds to that. Do they get a hot reception?
And Dino, your impressions so far coming into the fray, coming into the chaos that is Brave Combat Federation. Your thoughts, please, buddy.
Braves is the gold standard. Whenever you say somebody's fought in Brave, or you hear a fighter say, I'm going to go and fight in Brave, that is the gold standard. There's a certain prestige that comes with fighting on this show, you know, and it's recognized globally as now we hit the 30th country.